Discover the amazing transformation of this grandma, an inspiring journey of overcoming trauma and rediscovering her passions. Harriet's hands trembled as she turned the pages of her father's journals. Each line spoke of dreams unfulfilled, emotions long stifled, and vibrant sketches that danced across the pages, igniting a fire buried deep within her. At 72, she was seen as a quaint old lady, the neighborhood baker with flowers always blooming in her yard. Yet, as she traced her fingers over the ink, a whisper of something greater urged her to pick up a brush, a tool she had long ago believed bade farewell. The instant she set color to canvas, a medley of fear and exhilaration surged through her. Was it silly for a woman her age to chase a dream long thought dead? As each stroke of paint layered onto the canvas, it coaxed out frustrations crafted from decades of silence. The conflicting emotions swirled inside her, a prevailing dread that her family would scoff at this newfound ambition, intertwined with an ambition to finally express her suppressed self. Could she bear the ridicule from James, the local gallery owner notorious for belittling artists like her? As word spread about her paintings, a flicker of hope brightened her spirit, yet shadows hovered hungrily from her past. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Back in her studio, she wrestled with her thoughts, breathing irregularly as each brushstroke turned into stories of defiance. What if her children dismissed her efforts like her father's ambitions had been dismissed? A growing rage pushed at the back of her mind. This was her time, right? Yet the looming specter of James, with his critical gaze and mocking words, made her question every ounce of resolve. No one seemed to understand the depths of her aspiration, not her family, not her friends. As the days rolled into weeks, Harriet could feel tension building, bubbling like a pot ready to boil. The thought of her first solo exhibition felt like a dare, exposing herself not just as an artist but as a woman who wanted recognition in a landscape that had buried her for years. Accepting who she was meant confronting scars that had long defined her narrative. This was her moment, a battle between her newfound freedom on the canvas and the constraints imposed by the world outside. As the day of the exhibit approached, she hesitated, her muscles tight with anxiety. What if the critical eyes of her family watched with disappointment? What if the community dismissed her work? In this tempest of conflicting emotions, Harriet stood at a precipice, heart racing, breath caught and artist stripped bare, ready to show her soul to the world yet terrified of the rejection echoing in her mind. What would happen when she faced them all? Would she finally reclaim her identity, or would the weight of her past suffocate her? The thought spiraled, leaving her standing on the edge of claim and denial, ready to unveil her truth, uncertain if she would be met with applause or silence. With each passing day, the significance of the exhibition loomed larger in Harriet's mind. As the canvas filled with colors that spoke of her struggles and triumphs, another layer of self-doubt settled in. Could her art truly convey the message she so desperately wanted to communicate? Would anyone even care to listen? She spent hours in her studio, the scent of linseed oil mingling with the faint whiff of burnt toast from her kitchen. Each painting seemed to reflect different facets of her journey, yet she couldn't escape the nagging fear that those interpretations would be lost on others. What if the depth of her feelings was misunderstood or, worse, overlooked entirely? In moments of clarity, Harriet could hear the memories of her father echoing through the silence, his whispers urging her to fight for her truth. Art is not for the faint of heart, he had scribbled in one of his journal entries. It demands courage, the kind that transcends age, experience, and the constraints of the past. She yearned to embody that courage, yet inertia and insecurity held her hostage. Days turned into nights as she oscillated between ecstatic bursts of creativity and paralyzing apprehension. Her children's voices crept into her thoughts, their unconcealed judgment heightening her self-doubt. Did they see her as just an aging woman dabbling in a childish pursuit? Or did they still view her as the baker, the maternal figure whose life must revolve around their needs? As the eve of the exhibition approached, Harriet's internal dialogue transformed into an argument with herself. Pacing the room, her mind raced as she thought about James. His critiques could slice through her dreams with surgical precision. She visualized him strolling through her gallery, hands clasped behind his back, nodding with thinly veiled condescension. The thought was enough to stop her in her tracks. Was he worth the heartache of potential rejection? In a moment of desperation, she sat with a blank canvas before her, her fingers poised over the brushes but hesitant to dip them into color. "This is your moment, Harriet," she chastised herself, grappling with the emotions that threatened to spill over. She could either remain the faceless woman in a quaint apron or morph into the vibrant artist she aspired to be, a woman who owned her narrative, even if the world stood in judgment. Harnessing that inner voice, she picked up the brush once more, determined to pour everything she had into her final piece for the exhibit. The strokes flowed more freely, the colors mingled with fervor, and, with each movement, Harriet began to reclaim fragments of her identity. This was no longer just a painting, it was a declaration, a testament to her resilience and transformation. But doubt crept in again as the clock ticked towards the opening. Harriet stood before the final piece, her heart thundering in her chest. Framed in the light of the studio, she couldn't shake the feeling of being exposed, utterly vulnerable and laid bare. Would they understand? Would they see her the artist, the woman, and not the aging grandmother they had always known? As she stepped back, enveloped in that haunting uncertainty, something sparked within her, igniting a sliver of defiance. With daring resolve, she whispered, "It's time to be seen." The moment of truth was imminent, and the prospect of facing the world and all its judgments drew closer. All that she had painted, the battles she had fought within her own mind, would soon be laid bare. But would they celebrate her emergence, or would they dedicate her story to ridicule? The tension thickened in the air as she rallied her breaths, standing on the precipice of revelation. What would this journey truly cost her? Harriet awoke with the dawn, the soft light spilling through her studio window and illuminating the last remnants of her sleepless night. The final piece rested against the wall, a formidable giant that silently dared her to confront it. She felt like an intruder in her own space, the weight of her intentions palpable in the early morning stillness. This was not merely an exhibition, it was a bold assertion of her identity. Doubt clawed at the edges of her resolve as she walked toward the canvas. What did it truly convey? Beneath the vibrant swirls of color lay her fears, her joys, and everything in between. She recalled her father's words again: "Art demands courage." The challenge echoed in her mind, stirring the embers of her determination. With every stroke, she had blended not just hues but memories: her mother's laughter, her father's encouragement, the sweet scent of baking bread that filled their home. Each layer represented not just a part of her journey, but an affirmation that she was more than a sum of her experiences. She had the power to narrate her own story. Yet, with that realization came the heavy burden of expectation. The imminent judgment loomed like dark clouds above her head. She grappled with questions: would vulnerability breed connection or scorn? As she wrestled with her internal conflict, the soft chime of her phone jolted her back to reality. A text from her daughter, Chloe, appeared: "Can't wait to see your paintings, Mom. Hope you're feeling ready." The compliment was meant to bolster her confidence, but uncertainty lingered. Did Chloe even know the depths of what her mother was attempting to unveil? Often, it felt like a chasm separated their worlds, one of youthful ambition and the other of seasoned experience. "Mom, just be authentic," Chloe's voice echoed in her memory from their last conversation when Harriet had hesitated to reveal the more profound pieces she was laboring over. Authentic. The term embedded itself deep within her mind like a seed waiting to sprout, urging her to peel away the layers of doubt cloaking her true self. This was not simply an exhibit, it was an opportunity to challenge perceptions, hers and those of others. Harriet found herself calculating the risk. If she laid everything bare, what would her children see? Would they still see their mother, or would they perceive the artist she was striving to become? Stepping back to survey the canvas anew, something shifted inside her. Instead of anxiety, an unexpected clarity washed over her. Perhaps the greatest triumph wouldn't be in accolades or recognition, but in the simple act of expressing her truth. The fear of rejection was a shadow that would always lurk, but she could turn toward it, confronting the darkness rather than evading it. Filled with a renewed vigor, she picked up her brush and began to add final touches. The movements of her hand became more decisive, each stroke a proclamation, "I am here. I am real." As she worked, she thought of James and the biting critiques he was so known for. She didn't need his approval. Standing against that expectation felt liberating. In her defiance, she glimpsed the contours of a life reclaimed. It was not the marks of a tortured artist she painted, it was a bold woman welcoming both her scars and triumphs. Hours passed in a blur, and when the sunlight began to dip, the last splatters of paint had dried. Harriet stood before her final piece, radiating pride and vulnerability. The colors pulsed with life, a testament to every struggle and success she had known. But what awaited her at the exhibition? What if the very essence she poured into her art became fodder for judgment? That question hung in the air like a thick fog. One final glance at her creation ignited a realization: she was no longer confined by the roles others had defined for her. It's time, she reminded herself, to stand tall. It's time to truly be seen. With that thought rooted firmly in her heart, Harriet felt a shift. The next day would be a crossroads, a confrontation with her past and a leap into the unknown. In that crucible, would she emerge as the artist she longed to be, or would the weight of opinion bend her spirit? The horizon awaited her decision, shimmering with both promise and peril. As dust settled, Harriet felt the weight of both anticipation and trepidation coursing through her. The gallery air buzzed with an electric mix of excitement and tension. Each new canvas hung on white walls felt like a pulse, thrumming alongside her own. People shuffled in and out, their voices threading through the air like whispers of fate, yet Harriet stood still, an island in the sea of art and observation, grappling with her own fears. Suddenly, Chloe appeared beside her, a bright smile illuminating her face amid the dim gallery lights. "Mom, it looks incredible. I can't believe how much emotion is in that piece." Chloe pointed enthusiastically toward the canvas that had held Harriet captive for so long. The pride in her daughter's eyes sparked something deep within Harriet. Was this validation? It buoyed her spirits momentarily, but beneath that surface lay a tempest of doubt, the nagging voice cautioning her that validation was not something she should seek from external sources. "Thank you, sweetie. It's complicated," Harriet responded, trying to navigate through her muddled thoughts. "I want to connect, but what if they don't see what I see? What if all this means nothing to them?" Chloe placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're not here for them, Mom. You're here for you. Remember what you said about being authentic." The room around them felt like it shifted, the energy vibrating with unspoken stories. Harriet glanced from Chloe to her painting again. It represented a lifetime of experiences, unearthed emotions, both raw and beautiful, yet the prospect of unveiling it before an audience felt like standing on the ledge of a precipice, breathless and terrifically afraid of the plunge. As the hours wore on, whispers grew louder, some voices vibrating with admiration while others set themselves apart with skepticism. Harriet shifted nervously, occasionally catching bits of conversation that hinted at analysis of her work. "I don't get it, what is she trying to say?" Sliced through her awareness like a blunt knife. The thought stung. Why did she care about others' interpretations? Wasn't it enough to create what resonated with her? Rage bubbled within, mixed with the uncertainty. In that moment, she confronted a deeper truth. Was she only an artist in the eyes of others, or could she own that identity for herself? With a deep breath, Harriet turned her attention back to Chloe, gauging her daughter's reflections. "You know, it's exhilarating and terrifying at the same time," she admitted. "What if I fall short? What if they see me as just a mom?" Chloe rolled her eyes playfully. "But you're so much more than that." She gestured dramatically. "You're brave. You're challenging yourself. Own that." With those words echoing in her mind, Harriet squared her shoulders. She felt an ember sparked within her, a resolve ignited by Chloe's faith in her. The world outside flickered dimly, the art-filled room swirling with doubt transforming into a temple of hope. As she stepped toward the draped panel that would soon be removed to unveil her piece, adrenaline shot through her. This was her moment, not to seek approval but to reclaim the narrative, a proclamation that she had arrived. The anticipation unfolded within her like wings ready for flight. When the moment finally arrived, the crowd fell silent, their waving voices brought to a hush. Harriet took her place by the canvas, heartbeat syncing with the collective breath of the audience, ready to share the story behind her art, the story of vulnerability and resilience layered beneath those vibrant hues. In that instant, doubts began to erode, replaced by a deep conviction. Whether embraced or critiqued, the journey was hers to own. Harriet poised herself, ready to articulate the shifts transforming her from a mere curator of her family's story into the architect of her own legacy. As she began to speak, she hadn't anticipated the floodgates of emotion opening. Would they connect? Would she finally breach the chasm between their perceptions and her truth? The answer hung in the air, heavy with potential. What would it mean to reveal herself authentically to the public, and in doing so, would she discover a deeper connection not only with her audience but with herself? Harriet's voice trembled slightly as she began to weave her narrative around the canvas. The room's silence pressed against her, amplifying her heartbeat, each thump echoing her inner fears and aspirations. She took a moment to gather her thoughts, to allow the room to absorb not just the colors on the canvas but the vibrancy of her experiences that pulsated beneath the surface of each brushstroke. "Art has always been my sanctuary, a place to hide and expose all at once," she began, feeling the warmth of the audience's gaze. "This piece is not merely an expression, it's the culmination of countless moments both dark and luminous that have shaped my journey as an artist and as a person." The words flowed, gentle yet fervent, each one cementing her resolve. As she spoke, she observed various reactions among the crowd. Some leaned closer, intrigued by her every word, while others furrowed their brows, seemingly grappling to understand her intent. With each passing moment, Harriet felt the complex tapestry of her fears, fear of misunderstanding, fear of judgment begin to unravel. She spoke of vulnerability, of transcending the roles defined by society. The revelation of her own growth filled the space like a gentle tide, reminding her of the importance of authenticity. A particular moment from her past emerged unbidden, sitting in her dimly lit studio, brushes strewn about, tears mingling with paint as she confronted years of self-doubt. That was the crux of her journey, confronting deep-seated trauma, and seeking to rise above it. "For years, I curated my life for others, silencing my own voice in the process," she admitted, her heart racing under the weight of honesty. This time, however, was different. She was no longer just Harriet, the mom, or Harriet, the artist. She had become a woman reclaiming her narrative. The atmosphere shifted as she continued, sharing how each piece of art had mirrored her struggles and triumphs. In that narrative weave, it felt as though she shed layers of insecurity, one by one. The connection with the audience deepened. Perhaps they weren't just viewing art, they were witnessing a transformation, their curiosity intertwining with her healing. Harriet noticed Chloe in the back, her eyes reflecting pride and fierce belief. The young woman's presence reignited Harriet's spark, fueling her determination to push through. Yet amid that fire, the doubts began to creep back in. What if this isn't enough? What if they still fail to see me? It was almost palpable, the tension pulling at her veins. She had to confront it head-on. With a deep breath, Harriet leaned into that uncertainty. Her voice steadied, imbued with newfound conviction. This painting isn't about perfection. It's about connection, she declared, vulnerability interlaced with strength. It's about the layers of our lives that intertwine, the chaos, the beauty, the laughter, the tears. She paused, allowing silence to fill the space, granting the audience a moment to engage with her words. As her presentation concluded, Harriet felt an exhilarating blend of fear and liberation. She had bared her soul before an audience, and despite the whirlwind of judgment swirling around, she stood intact. The applause came as a gentle wave, washing over her, and for the first time, she felt deserved of it. Yet beneath that swelling tide of accomplishment lay a new wave of doubt. While she had physically revealed herself through art, what of her emotional barriers? Would she continue to build connections, or would she wall them off, retreating back into a world of self-doubt? As conversations filled the gallery once more, Harriet's mind raced with the possibilities that lay ahead. Just as she began to consider the next steps in her artistic evolution, Chloe approached her, eyes sparkling with admiration. "I think they truly understood you, Mom. You let them see the real you." As Harriet pondered her daughter's sentiments, a confirmation of her journey and a summons to continue exploring, she felt a surge of energy. This was only the beginning. The threshold of her past had been crossed, and now she stood on the brink of a new canvas, one yet to be defined. But as waves of excitement coursed through her, a profound question lodged in her mind. What new layers would she uncover about herself? And would she dare to navigate the complexities of vulnerability once more? Harriet stepped away from the crowd, the buzz of conversation swirling around her like an electric charge. She felt both buoyed and unsettled by the aftermath of her vulnerability, as if she had laid bare the very foundation of her identity for all to scrutinize. The air was thick with merit and uncertainty alike. Applause faded into a distant hum as she navigated through myriad reflections sparked by her monologue. Though her heart raced with adrenaline, she remained acutely aware of the task ahead. Part of her wanted to retreat, to hide again behind the comforting veil of silence and paint, while another part yearned to venture further into this newly discovered realm of connection. It was a precarious balance and oscillation between endurance and isolation. Chloe's proud affirmation lingered in her thoughts like an anchor, grounding her amidst the tumult. Yet doubt slithered back into her mind, weaving its way through her newfound confidence. Questions ricocheted within her. How would she expand on this experience? Was it merely a fleeting moment of bravery, or would it act as a catalyst for deeper exploration? Could she embrace more than just artistic expression? As she retraced her path through the gallery, her gaze shifted to her work, each canvas now imbued with fresh significance. The colors danced, memories unfolding within hues and textures, calling her to engage further. Maybe, just maybe, her art could inspire others to confront their vulnerabilities, similar to how she had. Thoughts of public workshops took root, an audacious goal to share not only her techniques but the underlying themes of resilience and healing that defined her journey. Yet, a familiar creeping fear surfaced. What if she failed to connect? What if the audience merely engaged with the art superficially, neglecting the emotional tumult it represented? The very idea of inviting others into her space gripped her with trepidation. But perhaps that tension was the crucible for growth. The thought blossomed into a sense of purpose she believed she could trust. Harriet found herself brimming with ideas, her internal dialogue rapidly transitioning to strategic consideration. She envisioned the workshop not just a technique demonstration but a collaborative safe space where participants could dialogue about their experiences and engage with the canvas as a conduit for healing. Yet, doubt lingered. Who was she to lead others on their paths? As she continued to wonder, Harriet caught a glimpse of a figure lingering at the back of the room. Luke, a fellow artist from earlier in her career, stood with arms crossed, scrutinizing her every movement. His demeanor had always contradicted her own, utterly forthright yet often critical, cultivating an air of superiority that had once stifled her spirit. Would he voice objections, furthering her internal conflict? The thought sent shivers down her spine. Thoughts of rejection resurfaced, stirring her age-old anxieties. Yet, she recognized something deeper under his gaze, a flicker of curiosity mixed with the shadows of skepticism, perhaps tallied with envy of her newfound courage. "Harriet," he called out, voice steady, "I didn't expect you to delve this deep. It's bold." His compliment didn't fully quell her fears, instead, it ignited a flicker of defiance in her. "Boldness doesn't come without risk," she retorted, a slight edge threading her tone. She had to rise above his judgment, to own her truth. Gradually, clarity surged, a resolve that maybe this confrontation was exactly what she needed to solidify her trajectory forward. "Maybe it's the risk that makes the transformation worthwhile," she replied. A heavy silence settled between them, charged with something unspoken. Harriet's heart raced anew. As the weight of this transformative moment pressed upon her, a surge of energy invoked recollections of every struggle endured and every choice made. This moment was hers, the room of past might shape her future, not bind it. Would she seize this opportunity to redefine both her path and the impact she could have on others? With that thought, the decision to face not just Luke but her own hesitations loomed large. Would she embrace this next elevation of her creative journey, or succumb again to the protective shadows? Driven by this newfound resolve, Harriet knew the moment to confront such fears directly was imminent. Amidst all the uncertainties, one truth crystallized: a real artist never stops evolving. Tomorrow would bring an opportunity to unveil those intentions. Would she extend her hand into the realm of teaching, or would she shield herself from the vulnerability that illuminated her journey? Each question morphed into a burning possibility, a cliffhanger propelling her toward what lay ahead. Harriet awoke the next morning with a lingering hum of determination pulsing through her veins. Sunlight filtered into her studio, casting playful shadows across the canvases that lined the walls. The vibrant colors seemed to call out to her, urging her to embrace the intentions she had nurtured during the night. Each brushstroke captured the nuances of vulnerability and strength, elements she had yet to fully wield in her creative journey. She sat at her small desk, scanning the papers sprawling before her, where she had sketched ideas for the workshop. The fervor of her thoughts poured onto the page, outlining concepts for exercises that would blend artistic exploration with emotional expression. Yet, as she began to draft a plan, uncertainty flickered along the edges of her mind, defining her moment of hesitation. What if her frame of reference, shaped by personal struggles, wasn't enough to guide others? The stark reality of her own battles weighed heavily, threatening to overshadow her vision. In that moment, she understood the path she wished to forge was steeped in authenticity. As she reflected on her life, Harriet realized it wasn't merely her artistic prowess that made her suitable as a guide, but the raw experience she held. Determined to channel that unease into confidence, she set about transforming the walls around her into a vibrant workshop space. Her canvases would serve not only as a backdrop but as an invitation to explore the unseen depths of their own stories. With each brushstroke she delivered, she began to envision potential. Her resolve hardened. What began as an idea of facilitating creativity morphed into an empowering mission to cultivate resilience. Carrying a sketchbook, Harriet made her way to a local coffee shop, where she could observe and reflect. The aroma of roasted beans permeated the air, mingling with conversations that ebbed and flowed around her. As she sat at a small table, she began jotting down thoughts about her future sessions. She wouldn't merely teach, she would seek to create a transformational experience, a launchpad for courageous dialogues concealed in brushes and colors. For a brief moment, she even thought about asking Luke to collaborate. Perhaps his stark perspective would ignite unique discussions in her workshop. But then the thought flared into doubt. What if he dismissed her vision? What if he couldn't understand the purity of her intent? Swallowing her anxiety, she decided to focus instead on the potential participants, people who might share their stories and lives alongside her. Who were they? What experiences drove them? Each visualization contained an energy that fueled her thoughts. If she could shape a workshop where art and conversation blended deeply, she believed it would serve as both a healing pathway and a canvas for communal growth. As the hours slipped by, Harriet found herself accompanied by an unexpected clarity. The endeavor ahead was shifting into focus. Teaching would be her evolution. But could such a leap redefine not only her trajectory but also empower others to confront their own vulnerabilities? With newfound motivation, Harriet returned to her studio, excited by the thought of engaging with others. But just as she settled in, her phone buzzed, an untimely interruption. Luke's name flashed across the screen, a simple invitation to meet. Her heart raced, not with dread, but anticipation. What awaited her? Would this surprise lead to a confrontation of her fears or an unexpected partnership that could elevate both their practices? As the weight of her decision settled upon her shoulders, one thought lingered: she was on the precipice of significant growth. The time had come to face the queries she had built within herself and explore the power of dual vulnerability. The invitation ignited within her a primal source of curiosity. The potential for confrontation was tantalizing. Could this be another turning point in her journey? She took a deep breath, uncertain yet excited, contemplating the myriad potential paths that lay ahead. Would she step forward into this personal evolution, or retreat once more into the safety of solitude? With the choice burning in her mind, she placed her hand over the phone, heart pounding with a reckless spirit that whispered loud and clear, "Invite the unknown into your life." Harriet hesitated, her phone lingering in her palm as the seconds ticked by, amplifying the weight of her decision. The prospect of meeting Luke filled her with an invigorating tension. Each chance encounter with him had always been tangled with waves of uncertainty and a promise of discovery. This time felt different. What if their conversation could push her forward in ways she had yet to anticipate? She finally pushed herself off the chair and paced the studio, the energy in the room mirroring her internal turbulence. The walls, draped in hues of her vulnerability, transformed into a haven for her ambitions. She had to choose. This meeting could either be a catalyst for her workshop or an entanglement in her doubts. Deciding to accept the invitation, she mentally rehearsed what she would say. Would she share her aspirations for the workshop? Would she voice her quiet fears about how others might perceive her experiences? The anxiety clamored in her chest, but so did a sense of purpose. She knew that if she allowed herself to retreat into silence, her aspirations would dwindle into shadows. As she arrived at the small bistro, a sense of calm washed over her. The minimalistic space, illuminated by soft light, bore a comforting familiarity that soothed her racing heart. She spotted Luke at a corner table, already absorbed in the sketch pad before him. "Hey," she offered, her voice steadier than she felt. "Harriet. It's great to see you," he replied, a genuine warmth in his tone. "I hope you don't mind me asking you here. I was really intrigued by your ideas about workshop facilitation." A rush of surprise flooded her. He had noticed her intentions. "I thank you. I've been sorting through a few things," she replied, gesturing at the pad before him. "What has been inspiring you lately?" As they exchanged ideas, Harriet felt the boundaries of her anxiety expanding. Luke shared snippets about his own creative projects, and slowly, she wove her vision into the conversation. She articulated her desire to create a space where art could reveal deeply held emotions. She explored her belief in the transformative power of vulnerability. But the further they delved, the more she sensed his response fluctuating between curiosity and skepticism. "That sounds ambitious," he said cautiously, tapping the table. "But do you really think your experiences alone are enough to guide others?" The question struck her like a bolt. Instinctively, she flinched but quickly reminded herself of her decision to embrace this dialogue. Luke's query stirred her frustrations and her doubts alike. "What is lacking in my experience?" she countered. Luke leaned back, uncertainty etched across his face. "I don't doubt your talent, Harriet. I just wonder if you're prepared to navigate other people's complexities. Every story is layered. Are you sure you're ready for that?" His words pricked at lingering fears. Could she truly bear the weight of others' vulnerabilities while grappling with her own? An internal storm brewed as she wrestled with this revelation. Was she overly optimistic? What if she failed to connect those distant threads of courage she imagined? The moment hung heavy between them. She realized she had a choice: retreat into the safety of defensiveness or embrace the discomfort of introspection. "I think we all navigate our complexities, Luke. I'm learning that sharing art can build bridges across struggles we each face," she said, her voice firm amidst the turmoil. The conversation shifted, but Harriet remained tethered between feeling empowered and intimidated. The potential for collaboration lingered like dew on a morning leaf, glistening, yet vulnerable to the slightest breeze. As they wrapped up their meeting, Harriet left the bistro with new resolve, but also with an unsettled tension pressing on her chest. Had she truly addressed the heart of her fear? Had she awakened a voice within that could carve a path for others while charting her own? Luke's skepticism shadowed her thoughts. Would she falter when faced with real participants whose stories could awaken her own unresolved battles? With her heart pounding a steady rhythm, she felt a renewed determination. She wanted to prove to herself that she could harness this experience not only for herself but for those who would join her journey. But just as she reached her studio door, an email notification buzzed through her pocket. It was from a participant she never expected, their message weaving a challenge she hadn't anticipated. "I'm excited to join your workshop, but I need to talk first. There are some things I've never shared before. Can I trust you?" Harriet paused, the weight of this unexpected inquiry crashing over her. What lay beyond that trust? She took a deep breath, preparing to leap into the unknown yet again. Would she fortify her own evolution while facilitating the revelations of others? With uncertainty lingering in the air, she understood this wasn't just about the workshop, it was a deeper initiation into her own story. What awaited her as she leaned into this new connection? Harriet's fingers hovered over her phone, the screen glowing under the dim lights of her studio. The email from the participant echoed in her mind, its simple request unspooling complex layers of emotion within her. The term trust loomed larger than any art piece she had ever attempted to create. She had never been a caretaker of stories, she was the one telling them, for her own healing. But facilitating someone else's journey? That was a daunting prospect. She paced the room, her heart racing with the fear of inadequacy. Was she truly equipped to support this person in navigating their vulnerabilities? What if her own past crept into the healing, splattering pain across a canvas she had hoped to keep clean? Each step she took felt heavier as her mind spiraled through worst-case scenarios, detracting her from the exhilaration of the workshop's potential. Settling into a chair, Harriet toyed with a paintbrush, the bristles catching the light like tiny spears. Perhaps Luke's skepticism had rooted itself deeper than she wanted to admit. Maybe facilitating others required solace she still lacked within her own story. Yet, as doubts swirled around her, another thought surged forward that this was an opportunity, not just for them, but for her. She closed her eyes, envisioning the workshop setting. The participants would enter the space she carefully curated, each with their own mosaic of struggles and strengths. In her mind's eye, she mingled her tentative confidence with the raw energy each individual carried. The image transformed, she saw herself witnessing the unfolding of shared experiences, a collective catharsis. If she could embrace her own complexity, why couldn't they do the same? With renewed composure, Harriet pulled out her notebook and began to jot down ideas, a structure that incorporated individual and group reflections. Strategies emerged as she focused on facilitatory techniques that could guide the process without overshadowing the participants' narratives. Inspiration flowed, and within minutes, she had a framework that not only allowed space for their stories but also included her growth. She wasn't just hosting, she was journeying with them. Yet, doubt still crept in. What if she stumbled when faced with hard truths? The thought sent a chill racing along her spine. But then the memory of Luke's voice reminded her that every complex story would inevitably challenge both the holder and the listener. She had to confront the possibility that failure might accompany her pursuit of growth. Almost instinctively, she realized that this tension between fear and faith was the battleground of honor. At that moment, her phone buzzed again. It was the participant, asking to meet the next day. The gravity of the request weighed heavily on her, but alongside that weight came an unexpected lightness. For the first time, she felt hopeful rather than overwhelmed. The prospect of sharing her space, her vision, and her journey brought forth an alchemical blend of determination and trepidation. Harriet paused, the enormity of her potential transformation settling into her bones. She could be the catalyst for someone else's change, as they might very well be for hers. The thought sent a jolt through her, propelling her from mere aspiration to solid intention. She typed a reply to the participant, agreeing to meet and discussing the workshop's goals. As she pressed send, a wave of quiet resolve washed over her. With each interaction, she shaped not just the workshop but her identity within it. Yet, just as she began to embrace the possibilities, a gnawing apprehension unsettled her serenity. What questions would arise in their conversation? What shadows could emerge from truths unsaid? With a deep breath, Harriet steeled herself. This was only the beginning, an open door to myriad explorations. But as her phone vibrated again with an incoming message, she couldn't shake a growing sense the workshop and her journey were intertwined in ways she was just starting to unravel. What unforeseen truths awaited her in the meeting to come? Harriet sat across from her participant, James, in a small cafe, her heart thrumming with both excitement and apprehension. As he detailed his struggles, confessions of grief, guilt, and despair, she absorbed his raw honesty like a sponge. Here was someone willing to trust her with his innermost fears, and in that moment, the enormity of her responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. With every word, James's narrative resonated with her own hidden battles, a familiarity that transcended age and experiences. She met his vulnerability with her own, recounting how art had been her refuge in times of darkness. It was a leap of faith for both of them. In that exchange, Harriet understood she wasn't merely a facilitator, but a fellow traveler navigating the labyrinth of emotions inherent in creating art. Their conversation flowed, honesty bridging the gap between their lives. Every shared experience etched layers of authenticity into Harriet's heart, enriching her desire to help others articulate their voices through art. As James spoke with conviction about his yearning to express himself, Harriet found herself energized, filled with an unwavering sense of purpose. She would guide him not as a seasoned expert, but as a laywoman paving a path alongside him. At that moment, she felt not just a teacher, but a groundswell of connection unfurling before her. This was what she had intended to create, the very interweaving of stories she had envisioned. After their meeting, a warmth enveloped her as she returned to her studio. She had walked alongside another's journey, validating his experience while also illuminating her own. The foundation for her upcoming workshop solidified. It was about shared humanity, healing through art, and sparking dialogues. Days passed as she prepared for the individuals who would step into her art space filled with emotion and beauty, newly invigorated by her aspirations. Every brushstroke she created before the event became infused with hope and anticipation, the colors singing with the promise of transformation. She envisioned the participants walking into that sacred space, grappling with their fears yet welcoming the chance to speak their truths. On the day of the workshop, anticipation coursed through Harriet's veins, electrifying her spirit. Participants arrived, each one a mosaic of stories waiting to unfold. As they mingled, she felt the energy in the room shift, an alchemic fusion of tension and camaraderie. As they settled into their seats, Harriet took a moment to breathe deeply. This was her moment, an intersection of purpose and passion. With confidence, she shared her own journey, reiterating the importance of vulnerability and creativity. Eyes met hers, and a wave of understanding rippled through the group. In every silent nod, Harriet felt the validation that had once eluded her. She was creating a space for others to flourish. Throughout the workshop, Harriet guided participants through exercises that coaxed out their stories, creative prompts that propelled them to paint their pains, their joys, and their complexities. The canvas became a portal for expression, a way to take the fragmented pieces of their lives and assemble something beautiful together. As the workshop progressed, emotions unfolded like petals, revealing the raw beauty of shared narratives. James spoke first, his voice steady and resonant as he revealed personal reflections of love and loss. Other participants followed suit, transforming their pain into vibrant colors on their canvases. Harriet was awash in a profound sense of intrinsic satisfaction. They were doing it together. As the final strokes were laid down, Harriet observed the artworks representing each person's journey. The room was filled with an energy that transcended the usual discourse of art. It buzzed with healing. There, amidst laughter and tears, Harriet realized that she had conquered her lingering self-doubt. These paintings weren't just a reflection of their experiences, they were manifestations of courage, defiance against judgment, and acceptance of self. At the conclusion, as participants stood before their works, a sense of pride illuminated their faces. Harriet saw in them everything she had ever aspired to be: open, authentic, and unapologetically present. In that moment, she knew that each person had transformed not just their canvas, but their sense of self-worth. When the workshop adjourned, James approached her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You have no idea how much this means to me. I was ready to hide, and you helped me find my voice." Harriet's heart swelled. This was the promise she had sought to fulfill, not just to guide others in art, but to inspire confidence, bravery, and healing through vulnerability. She realized she had come full circle in her journey. The fearful woman who once hesitated to pick up a brush had transformed into a beacon for others, embodying what she once deemed impossible. In the days that followed, with each new workshop, she noticed a solid confidence developing within her. She had established her voice amidst the noise, carved out a position as a mentor, and received recognition not only from her participants but within her own family. Her children began to see her not just as a mother, but as the fearless artist she had become. As Harriet stood before her latest canvas, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The whispers of doubt that once plagued her had diminished, replaced by the sounds of creativity flourishing around her. She had achieved something monumental. She had transformed her passion into purpose. With pride swelling in her chest, Harriet knew there was no turning back. This journey had instilled in her a newfound belief that everyone, no matter their past, possesses a narrative worthy of expression. As she stepped outside into the golden light, Harriet glanced at her blossoming garden, an emblem of her journey. Life bloomed all around her, vibrant and resilient. She was no longer bound by her past or held back by fear. She was free to paint her future. Now was the time to share this story. Every person who crossed her path had a story to tell, and she would be there to help them paint it. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.